Imagine a person who, as a child, sat on Queen Victoria's lap and in her old age witnessed the dawn of color television and the rise of the pop group ABBA. A person who hosted Winston Churchill in her dining room, hunted in the desert with the founder of Saudi Arabia, and on Sundays simply boarded a regular London bus carrying her shopping bags. January 1st, 1981. British newspapers were running screaming headlines. The country was in the grip of Margaret Thatcher's harsh economic reforms, and transit strikes had paralyzed half of London. Amid all this noise, political turmoil, and non-stop news, almost no one noticed a tiny column buried on the back pages, just a few polite sentences and a single official black and white photograph. On January 3, 1981, a 97-year-old woman passed away quietly at Kensington Palace. The world was too busy with the concerns of a new, fast-paced, triumphant century to notice the passing of the last Victorian, the last surviving grandchild of Queen Victoria. Her name was Princess Alice, Countess of Athlone. And her 97 years of life were far more extraordinary than you might expect. On February 25th, 1883, Princess Alice Mary Victoria Augusta Pauline was born at Windsor Castle. Her father was Prince Leopold, the Duke of Albany, Queen Victoria's youngest son, whom his mother called the most intelligent and intellectual of all her children. The young princess's mother was Princess Helena of Waldeck and Pyrmont. Helena was a highly educated woman possessing outstanding knowledge of mathematics and philosophy, and her sister Emma became the queen consort of the Netherlands. Despite the fears of many European dynasties regarding Prince Leopold's severe illness, Helena was not afraid to unite her life with him, and their marriage, though short, was filled with genuine love. From her very birth, the shadow of a deadly disease hung over Alice's family. Her father, Prince Leopold, suffered from hemophilia, a genetic blood clotting disorder that Queen Victoria had passed on to several of her descendants. On March 28, 1884, when little Alice was only 13 months old, Leopold slipped on a staircase in Cannes, suffered a head injury, and died of a brain hemorrhage. Her mother, Helena, was left a widow with a 1-year-old daughter and pregnant with her second child. The widowed Duchess of Albany dedicated herself to raising her children and to extensive charitable work, notably founding the Deptford Fund to help young working-class women. The family lived at Claremont House in Surrey. Queen Victoria treated her orphaned grandchildren with particular tenderness. In her letters, she noted that little Alice was remarkably beautiful and clever. The princess's childhood was spent under the strict supervision of her royal grandmother. Alice studied languages, history, literature, and traditional disciplines of the era. She personally remembered the rigid etiquette of Victoria's court, the endless mourning rituals, and the atmosphere of the bygone 19th century, which shaped her character, fierce self-discipline, and an unconditional sense of duty. Princess Alice would become a living bridge between centuries. In 1961, during the official visit of U.S. President John F. Kennedy to London, the aging princess still shone at royal receptions, astonishing guests with stories of a time that others knew only from history textbooks. On July 19, 1884, 4 months after their father's death, Alice's younger brother, Charles Edward, was born, inheriting the title of Duke of Albany. In 1900, the family's life changed dramatically following the death of Queen Victoria's second son, Prince Alfred, and the renunciation of succession rights by the next brother in line, the 16-year-old Charles Edward was forced, by the will of Queen Victoria, to move to Germany to assume the title of ruling Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Princess Alice, along with her mother, accompanied her brother to Germany, where she lived until 1903 to help him adapt to a foreign culture. The fate of Charles Edward became a tragedy of a divided family. During the First World War, he fought on the side of Germany against Great Britain. In response, the British Parliament stripped him of all his British titles in 1917, effectively branding him a traitor. Disillusioned and deposed after the German Revolution, Charles Edward became a staunch supporter of Adolf Hitler in the 1930s. In 1945, Charles Edward was arrested by American forces on charges of complicity with the Nazi regime. Upon hearing the news, Princess Alice and her husband immediately traveled to occupied Germany in an attempt to secure her brother's release from captivity. However, the American authorities refused to yield to royal pleas. In 1946, a denazification court sentenced the former duke to a heavy fine that virtually bankrupted him. He died in poverty in Coburg in 1954, leaving a deep scar in his sister's heart. Let us return to the beginning of the century. On February 10, 1904, Princess Alice married Prince Alexander of Teck at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle. Prince Alexander was the younger brother of Princess Mary of Teck, the wife of the future King George V. This union strengthened the internal bonds of the British royal dynasty. Following her marriage, Alice assumed the title of Princess Alexander of Teck. The couple dedicated themselves to public service, royal engagements, and extensive travel. Alice was already earning a reputation as one of the most widely traveled members of the royal family, visiting Ceylon, Malaya, Singapore, Siam, Egypt, Uganda, Palestine, and the West Indies. The couple had 3 children, a daughter, May, and 2 sons, Rupert and Maurice. However, their domestic happiness was short-lived. Their youngest son, Maurice, suffered from hemophilia and died in infancy, living for less than 6 months. Their elder son, Rupert, also inherited the defective hemophilia gene from her mother. Alice understood that any injury to her son could prove fatal. And that is exactly what happened. On April 15, 1928, 20-year-old Rupert was involved in a car accident in France. The injuries themselves were not critical, but because of his hemophilia, he suffered a massive brain hemorrhage that doctors were unable to stop. The death of her heir was a devastating blow to Princess Alice. She was thousands of miles away in South Africa, and in the era before widespread air travel, she could not return home in time. She was unable to attend her own son's funeral. In her stead, the funeral was attended by King George V, Queen Mary, and the Prince of Wales. Rupert was buried at Frogmore in Windsor. She bore this, as she did everything else, with what those around her invariably described as stoicism and dignity. She did not withdraw from public life, nor did she speak publicly of her grief. She simply carried on. Only her daughter May would outlive her parents. The title of Earl of Athlone became extinct upon Alexander's death, as he left no surviving male heir. The First World War forced the British monarchy to completely reassess its German roots. In July 1917, King George V decided to rename the ruling house of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha to the House of Windsor and ordered all members of the royal family to renounce their German titles and styles. Alice's husband, Prince Alexander of Teck, renounced his title of Prince of Teck in the Kingdom of Württemberg and assumed the surname Cambridge. On November 7, 1917, King George V created him Earl of Athlone. Alice herself renounced her titles of Princess of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha and Duchess of Saxony. However, as a granddaughter of Queen Victoria in the male line, she retained her status as a British princess of the blood royal. From June 1917 until the end of her life, her official style was Her Holy Royal Highness Princess Alice, Countess of Athlone. In 1923, the Earl of Athlone was appointed Governor-General of the Union of South Africa. The couple arrived in South Africa, and Alexander officially assumed office on January 21, 1924. Alice became the vice-regal consort. Local society quickly grew fond of the princess for her simplicity, warmth, and active participation in the country's public life. She traveled extensively throughout the region, supporting the development of healthcare, education, and local women's organizations. Their family lived between two residences, in Cape Town and Pretoria. The Cape Town suburb of Athlone was named in honor of the Governor-General and his wife. Their tenure in South Africa coincided with politically challenging years, marked by the rise of nationalism. Nevertheless, Princess Alice's tact and diplomacy helped smooth over many of the rough edges between the Dominion and the metropole. The couple left South Africa in December 1930, leaving behind an exceptionally warm legacy. In 1936, a chance encounter during the Royal Ascot races changed the course of diplomatic history between Great Britain and the Middle East. Due to the illness of King George V, Princess Alice found herself seated at lunch next to Crown Prince Saud, the eldest son and heir of King Abdul Aziz ibn Saud of Saudi Arabia. During their polite conversation, Alice mentioned that she had never been to the Arabian Peninsula, to which Prince Saud immediately responded with an invitation to visit his country. The princess, renowned for her passion for travel and exploring uncharted corners of the world, gladly accepted the challenge, despite the fact that European women rarely visited the Arabian deserts in those years. 2 years later, her historic journey began. Right on her 55th birthday, Princess Alice and her husband, the Earl of Athlone, arrived in the port of Jeddah. This made her the first member of the British royal family, and indeed the first representative of any European royal house, to officially visit the young Saudi kingdom. At the port, the royal guest was warmly welcomed by another of the king's sons, Prince Faisal, the future monarch of Saudi Arabia. King Abdulaziz hosted a tea ceremony and a grand state banquet in Jeddah in honor of Princess Alice and her husband, a gesture of extraordinary hospitality and respect for the era. The trip lasted until March 17, 1938. During this time, the Athlones crossed the desert by car from the Red Sea to the Persian Gulf. Alice, a passionate photographer, documented the entire journey, capturing 324 rare photographs that are now preserved in the King Abdulaziz Public Library in Riyadh. By pure coincidence, the princess's historic visit coincided with a pivotal moment in the kingdom's history. It was in March 1938 that commercial quantities of oil were discovered at Dammam Well No. 7, and Princess Alice personally visited this legendary site just days before her departure. In 1940, Following the sudden death of the Governor-General of Canada, Lord Tweedsmuir, the British government once again turned to the experience of the Earl of Athlone. Canada was already at war with Nazi Germany. The couple's voyage across the Atlantic in June 1940 was highly perilous, with their ship sailing in anti-submarine zigzags to evade German U-boats. On June 21, 1940, the Earl of Athlone officially took office as Governor-General of Canada. Princess Alice launched immense charitable and organizational efforts in Canada. She assumed the roles of Honorary Commandant of the Women's Royal Canadian Naval Service and Honorary Air Commandant of the Royal Canadian Air Force Women's Division. The princess personally inspected military bases, hospitals, and munitions factories, boosting the morale of Canadian women working for the war effort. A major historical milestone was the hosting of the Quebec Conferences in August 1943 and September 1944. At the Citadel of Quebec, the Earl of Athlone and Princess Alice hosted British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt. It was during these high-level meetings that the Allied leaders finalized the plans for the D-Day landings in Normandy and mapped out the strategy for victory in World War II. Alice served as the heart of these diplomatic receptions, providing exceptional hospitality at a critical turning point in global history. In 1946, the Athlones returned to Britain and settled in their apartments at the Clock House in Kensington Palace, a residence occupied with the gracious permission of the Queen, which had previously been used by Alice's mother. Their country home was Brantridge Park in South Sussex. Alexander died in 1957 at Kensington Palace. Alice was 74. She would live for another 24 years. Throughout these decades, she remained a working member of the royal family, attending events, advising on protocol, and maintaining the charitable connections she had built over 60 years of public service. Her knowledge of royal protocol was unrivaled. She was the oldest working member of the royal family and had personally witnessed events that no other living person could remember. She had known Queen Victoria personally. She remembered the Edwardian court. She had met Churchill, Roosevelt, and Patton. She could describe a high society dinner from the 1890s as if it had taken place just last week. Younger members of the royal family and courtiers regularly consulted with her. The princess attended 4 coronations of British monarchs in her lifetime, including the coronation of Elizabeth II on June 2, 1953, where she occupied a place of honor among the oldest members of the dynasty. For the young Queen Elizabeth II, Princess Alice remained the embodiment of living history and a close confidant. The Queen, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and Princess Margaret were frequent guests in her apartments at Kensington Palace, deeply valuing her wisdom and sense of humor. Alice developed a particularly warm and close relationship with the Elizabeth II's children. As early as 1950, at Princess Anne's christening, Alice sat next to the 2-year-old Prince Charles, and in 1969, an adult Princess Anne personally accompanied the elderly Alice to theater premieres in London. The younger generation of Windsors genuinely admired how easily this remarkable woman combined the flawless manners of the Victorian era with modesty in her daily life. Kensington locals could often spot the elderly princess riding on a regular London bus or doing her own shopping in local stores. In 1966, she published her memoirs, titled For My Grandchildren. the book became a valuable historical source, describing the life of the Victorian court from a first-person perspective. In this book, the princess gathered unique memories spanning 6 British reigns, her travels abroad, and personal encounters with key figures of the 20th century. The publication was complete with rare family photographs and a detailed genealogical tree, and the narrative style itself is characterized by sincerity, warmth, and an astonishing accuracy of detail that Alice had carefully preserved in her memory. Princess Alice passed away quietly in her sleep at Kensington Palace on January 3, 1981, just under 2 months shy of her 98th birthday. Her funeral took place on January 8th at St. George's Chapel, Windsor. She was buried alongside her husband and son at the Royal Burial Ground, Frogmore. With her passing, the chapter of the Victorian era was closed forever. Her life, spanning nearly a century, was an example of devotion to duty, resilience in the face of personal tragedies, and the ability to adapt to a changing world. Princess Alice remains in history as a vital connecting link between the past and the future of the British Crown. The life of Princess Alice shows that even in the shadow of great monarchs, one can live a vibrant, independent life and leave a profound mark on the history of several continents. Her remarkable resilience and readiness to face the challenges of her time continue to command deep respect today. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and leave a like if you want to see more stories like this one. And if you have anything to add, a fact I might have missed, a detail from Alice's life, or your own thoughts on her story, that is exactly what the comments are for. I read all of them. See you in the next video.